everything. This is not about everything. This is not
Daniel,
about
what is
everything.
the inspiration of your creative process? Where you start from?
Let me think. I often start with like a very simple idea, and usually it's actually kind of abstract and formal. Like for the duet montage for 3, I just started with the idea of sequence, like one thing after another, and then over time that gradually developed into more complex and intricate ideas about photography and memory, and similarly with the solo, I just started with the idea of continuous motion, any kind of continuous motion, but then I guess over time in my process I start with something very broad and try to find the specificity of that idea.
Somehow your work seems connected to the idea of sort of Goldberg variations about human processes. Do you think it's a fitable definition of your...
Maybe. I mean, yes. I don't know if it's fitable. I mean, I'm interested in formal ideas about dance, but I'm also interested in taking information from the world and putting that into a performance context, because often I think the theater can be self-referential and just a little box for itself, and I like to use theater and take in information from the world and put it into the theater space.
Another word you mentioned a couple of times while we were speaking is informal. But, for example, Montage for 3 seems quite inspired by pop art, for example, the overlapping of icons with reality till the meaningless. And also the second work keeps on moving till the meaningless. What is the border between meaning and not meaning?
Well, I think I mean, from my point of view, what I'm trying to do is to generate meaning in a way that's not like making statements or like developing meaning through lists, basically. Like in the first piece, there's lists of photographs, basically, and when you put inside a list, if you put one thing next to another thing, it generates a certain meaning between the relationship between those things. And then similarly, in Not About Everything, I give a list of things, and when one thing comes after another, there's meaning generated in the space between the two things. But it's also true that over time, with a list, as the list goes on and on, you begin to verge on meaninglessness or I don't know. I mean, for me, I'm working with meaning, and I don't know if I'm working with meaninglessness, but I'm working with the different ways of generating meaning.
Do you think you're working at the border of theater and dance? And if yes, what's the meaning, if we can talk about meanings, of your presence in the performance? Do you ever think of a performance without you? Or you're meaningless yourself? At least to you.
No. I mean, I can imagine a performance without myself, but I also I like to perform, so I often put myself into the performance. But it depends on the idea I'm working with, like, and the people who I'm collaborating with, and how many people we want on stage. Like, it's kind of as simple as that. But I think in the solo, like, because I'm the creator and also the person who's present on stage, there's something very important about my presence in that piece, and there's something personal about that piece that I'm sharing. In the duet, I could imagine a different person, like my individual presence isn't so important for that particular work. But it's hard work, and I've done the work already, so it's easy for me to perform in that piece.
It was the first time for you to perform in Italy?
Yes, this is the first time.
Even though you never see the people looking at you in your second performance, Do you feel there is something site-specific, country-specific? Do you feel the response of people, at least to your images, to the settlement of things you choose, is different from place to place, from country to country? Or you think that the pop or is really universal and there is no difference?
No, I think there's distinctions between countries. I mean, countries, for not about everything, countries where people speak English, they understand things faster, and even if there's subtitles, like the subtitles don't create the same rhythm, and a lot of what I'm doing is about the rhythm of the language. So I don't know, there's just a different familiarity, but I think in general it's kind of difficult for me to tell people's responses, but I think in general people have something to latch onto, because I do take from popular culture, I take things from the outside world that people know about, and current events in the news, and I think people in many places have something to latch onto in my work.
And what do you think about yourself?
What do you mean?
What do you mean?
As an artist.
As an artist.
I don't know. I mean, I'm interested. I come from the dance field, so I'm interested in working with things that are part of dance, like the body and movement, and image and visual thing, and the theater setting. But I try to also borrow from what I know of different arts, from the visual art world and from music and from theater. So even though I'm not an expert in every field, I try to borrow from every field, because I think everything can give me information to use in my work.
Just the last question, what do you have for breakfast?
Well, I was at a hotel, so I just had like some bread and yogurt. But usually I just eat, I can eat almost anything, but I have to not eat a few hours before the performance.
All right. Thanks a lot and good luck.
Thank you.